is in.
It's time for us to talk by local Lowveld, and we've been having a super series with Mel Tomlinson. You work with business leaders, with entrepreneurs, with small businesses. What is the difficulties that they are struggling with on a daily basis?
I think one of the main things is it's this kind of lockdown, COVID, and now the SA crisis fatigue. I think there's an enormous amount of fatigue setting in. So, when we thought, well, this will be over in 3 months and then in 6 months, and then we thought we're going to start a new year with a bang and it's all going to be over. And now we're kind of like heading towards our second Christmas. And, so I think there's a massive fatigue that's set in. And then I think there's also the added experience of businesses cut as much as what they could last year to survive. They, dug into their savings, maybe sold off some assets, let go of some people. So when the pandemic was at its height, the government actually supported business, but that everything is still the same as 2020, actually, including the lockdown with the added crisis that we have now. And there isn't the kind of support that we had before. And then the third thing that I would say is the levels of frustration are incredibly high, because the inefficiency that has evolved as a result of lockdown, as a result of people working from home, basically, and lockdown. There's a lot of inefficiency, and it's difficult to get hold of departments and things like that. So I think there's an enormous amount of frustration.
So let's get practical. We need to work on retaining our good employees.
Yeah, I think that if anybody, people that already let employees go last year because of the stress factor and the financial concern, I think there's a lot of regret in the market about having let some really good employees go. So, sometimes it's a first in, first out. Sometimes it's a last in, first out. It depends on how a business deals with these matters, but you don't want to be losing loyalty, productivity, and competence at the moment. Those are the things you really want to hang on to. Those are the people that are actually capable of taking on more than their share as well. And so many companies have now got, one person doing 2 or 3 different jobs. So I think that's very important to keep good people right now. There's a lot of scouting around. There's a lot of headhunting for good people as well.
How can we work around the rent issue?
Yeah, I think, that was also a window period where landlords were generous, but they also have expenses. They are also in business to make money. They also have to, add extra security to their buildings and things like that and fix the plumbing. So I think that was a window period that is fast coming to an end. But I have been my heart has been very warmed by the generosity of so many landlords that have met their people more than halfway and, done what they could. And I think that businesses have done a big, have done what they can as far as this goes. So they've either returned home and let go of those leases, but there's still opportunity to share space is becoming. It already started becoming really popular probably about 10 years ago in the States. But sharing space, because space is a highly sought after commodity, is very popular. And I also see the whole thing of collaborating in space, collaborating with people that bring feet to your business and you bring feet to theirs. So for instance, hairdressers are really good at getting nail technicians to sit inside their hairdresser, and they benefit from the relationship. Having a psychologist and a family psychologist with a divorce lawyer in the same building just makes perfect sense. It's a little bit like the car places have a mechanic and a wheel specialist and this and that all in one building. It just makes for convenience and collaboration. And then even if you're working from home, there are a couple of sometimes you're just not creative and you don't think. There are a couple of very small things that you can do, a bit of drywalling, a bit of this, to share some space and bring in an extra couple of R1,000 a month, or bring an employee that can't work from home. So there are always new ways of doing things.
It's never been as important now as well. It's never been as important now as to shop around and make sure that you get good prices. Maybe elaborate a bit about that.
Yeah, so I again want to say, and this is a buy local space. So I do want to say, first try local, buy local. I do want to say that, and shop around local, shop around, and I know that there's a big thing about rather to support the little person that works from home like myself, but if you are supporting one of our big corporate retailers, Macro, P&A, one of these places, you're also supporting a family. You're also supporting people that have got jobs, that live locally and buy locally, shop locally. So I think there's nothing wrong with where you buy. But last week, I needed to buy some ink for my refillable ink printer. And I shopped local. I got some prices. And then I shopped online on Takealot. Don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but anyway. And it was a 33% difference in the price. Now, in the current economic situation that we are in, we cannot ignore big price cuts like that. I'm not going to be penny wise and pound foolish and save R5 and then spend R20 on delivery. That's stupid. So take that into account, because often your local people actually deliver free of charge, and then if you order online, you've got to pay delivery. But it's a lot of money can be saved that way.
Your advice today is that if we want to save money, we should actually cut back on meetings. Maybe explain that a little bit.
So many people complain about how many meetings their company has and how inefficient they are and what a waste of time they are. So I think people will be happy about that. But when it comes to costs, if you actually just work out the cost of a meeting, which I must tell you, I've never heard of anybody working out the cost of a meeting. So say you've got 10 employees that need to pitch every Friday for a 2-hour meeting. You take the average hourly rate that those people get paid, times by the number of employees, times by the number of hours. And you say to yourself, well, if I had to take out physically, out of my till or out of my bank account or out of my pocket, 9,500 Rand or 25,000 Rand to hold this meeting this morning, would I do that? And I think it changes the perspective on whether that meeting is really important, whether it's important to have 2-hour meeting, or how much of it can be done in other ways, but via WhatsApp and email and other ways. So I think we just need to just relook at everything.
You touched on saving money when you buy ink and paper. Sometimes it's these little foxes that can really drive up your monthly expenses, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at one stage, I changed from an ink cartridge printer to a refillable ink printer, partly from a eco-environmental reason as well, because I think those ink cartridges that you just keep on throwing in the trash are really bad for the environment. And they are, indestructible, and they're just yucky. But by changing over, I saved, and that's a tiny business, a one-person business. I probably saved about 12,000 Rand a year on ink. That is a lot of money. I mean, if you take other companies, and especially now that companies have maybe had to buy a printer for each of their employees to take home and have something at home. And then they have to buy the ink cartridges. And of course, the employee is letting their child print out, all their school projects in color. So just make sure it's refillable, because it is really, you can save thousands and thousands of Rands with little things like that. And paper as well. Go paperless as far as possible. Paper is just no more the in thing. South Africa is a generous and abundant society. We are not used to suffering. We are not used to cutting back. We are not used to, every person bringing their own tea, own coffee, own cookies, own this, own that. I think that, we cringe. We really, really cringe when we have to start becoming incredibly austere about things. But it depends on your business. It depends on where you are financially. And, it just is about being practical, making good decisions and making them faster rather than slower. I think one of the biggest problems is we delay the hard decisions for as long as possible, and then they become, emergencies, and they become nasty, and they become, where we didn't want to go. So I really think, start making those small adjustments now. Start training your people into a savings mindset. This is a mindset that we have to adapt or adopt for the next maybe few months, maybe few years. We don't know how long this is going to take for us to get out of this economic situation that we are going into much quicker now. So I think it is take those hard decisions up front and get on with it, rather than waiting until your back is against the wall and you have very, very few choices. My husband always says you can always save 10%, and 10% could mean a person's job.
100.5 FM